Hello, everyone. I wanted to come on here and just riff on states for a bit. This is something that has been pretty intensely on my mind lately. And since launching Big Kids School, this is like the crux of Big Kids School. This is like the biggest factor. It's the most important piece. I'm going to explain why. And I just want to talk about the different states that we're toggling in and out of every day, because we're doing it every day, all the time. You're fluctuating in between different states of consciousness and what those are really doing for you. So let me see. I think I want to open up with an explanation. This actually comes from Abraham Hicks, and this is going to help the rest of the conversation make sense. Okay, so Abraham Hicks, the idea is there's more steps than this, but the first 3 steps of creation are you ask. So you're incarnated, you're embodied, you're in your human form. You go out, you explore the world, and you experience contrast. So simply by living in a comparative state, you then give birth to desires as a result of wandering around Earth and being able to compare this or that. So you're constantly evaluating your life from a state of preferences, okay? Or let me back up. You're constantly creating and developing preferences because of the exposure to life that you have, okay? So then the second step has nothing to do with you. This is just a natural consequence of the universe. The universe responds. God provides. It is already delivered energetically. So once you decide, okay, I don't like this, so I want this, or I desire this, or this is something I'm wanting more of. Anytime you come to that point, which is all day, every day, you're having micro versions of this. The universe is responding to you and saying, yes, got it. We're holding the line. Your soul, or in Abraham Hicks terms, it would be called inner being, expands to that point. So your soul is constantly holding the position, and it's holding the posture of we are experiencing this thing in present time, okay? Now, your physical self is not continually up to speed with that version of you, the energetic version of you, the astral version of you, your soul. Okay, so your job is to harmonize with it, get up to speed with it. This is where step 3 comes in. Step 3 is you reduce resistance to the point where you're considered in the receptive mode so that you can receive what you have already created through your exposure to life. So I'm exposed to contrast, I decide what I want. The universe delivers energetically. Step 3 is you let it in. Okay. Now, a lot of the time, and this is something that I'm seeing with clients a lot, I even had a lot of conversations in my mastermind about this. This isn't working. I don't like this. I don't want that. I'm frustrated by this. I don't like. And that is a natural part of your existence, and that's a natural part of life. And we don't want to do away with any of that. However, it is important to note that if you live in that state, you're going to start having problems. Then you're going to create chronic dissatisfaction, or the other thing that can end up happening is people overdo manifestation processes as a means to like put out the fire, so to speak. And that might work for a while, but that's also not going to really serve you long term. It's not a good long-term plan. You can do it for a little while, and then you're going to start to runs the risk of you experiencing an existential crisis if you're only using manifestation as a means to get to a destination. And then you can start getting frustrated with the manifestation process, because if you're constantly using it as a way to get the thing, I need to get there, I need to get there, I need to get there, then there's not going to be a whole lot of pleasure in that, because you're kind of delaying where the gratification and the satisfaction begins. And this is why we have such a jacked up relationship with personal development in particular, is it's frequently being used as a means to get to a destination. And the thing is, it can turn into a black hole. And that's when people really start to have a crisis around the type of, or the level of efforting that they're doing around personal development. Okay. So what is most needed collectively is an emphasis on step 3. That is where people are the most atrophied. That's where people are the weakest, generally speaking, is they have a hard time getting in what I call the pocket. The pocket is like that bliss point where you're not impatient because you're not lacking, and you're not fearing because you're super connected with yourself, and you're in deep satisfaction of life as a whole. And circumstances don't need to be perfect, but you're just so present with now that it's like you're really tapping the nutrients that come from experiencing the fullness of life itself. Okay, so this is, if you've ever wondered why Eckhart Tolle is kind of just like, he has this energy of, obviously it's very monk-like, but there's also this level of stability that he holds within his physical body, is because of his ability to access that presence and receiving and hold the posture of being in step 3. Now, I'm not saying that we should all become monks, and quite honestly, that would be pretty boring. I would never recommend that we all just get into this place of like, I'm just present with now all the time. However, what I do think is that it would serve humanity immensely. It would serve all of us. It would serve our happiness. It would serve our satisfaction. It would serve our families. It would serve our friends. It would serve our community. It would serve the people that we come in contact with if there was a stronger emphasis on accessing a state of presence and pleasure and feeling good and staying connected and enjoying where we are. And if that were facilitated more, then there would be, just let me put it this way, a lot of really great things would happen if that was where we placed the emphasis. Now, let me go back to, this is the place where people are struggling the most, because everything has become a fucking project. Okay, so personal development, manifestation tools have all become projects. Having fun has become a project. Being in pleasure has become a project. And for whatever reason, there is this habit that I'm seeing people get into, which is, I'm just going to do this thing with the ulterior motive that if I do this thing, then I'll get that, which immediately pushes you out of the pocket. So let me give you an example of this. Have you ever been in a meditation? You get in meditation, you're quieting the mind. Okay, you're just focusing on your breathing. You're not really thinking about anything. And then all of a sudden you start to feel that buzzing and tingling sensation in the body. And you can tell that you're starting to access that point where you're receiving the energy. And as soon as you put your attention on it, as soon as you say, oh my God, I'm right there, it completely disappears. Because a lot of the time it's like your conscious mind then wanted to do something with it rather than just bask in it. And this is kind of what has happened in so many areas, is instead of doing things for the sake of the experience itself, it's become something that like we want to slip in an ulterior motive, and then it kind of spoils the whole game. And so I'm just noticing this in so many different areas. Like it's really pulled us out of presence and out of true connection with the values that I think people have been very disconnected from. Like when the farther into manifestation that I've gone, where it has ultimately led me is to asking myself the tough question about my personal values, what I desire to experience in life at a core level. So instead of looking at the core values and what the essence of life that you're really wanting to create, people have started looking at what are the bells and whistles, what are the accoutrements that we want to have as a result of what is really underneath it all, a core value that you're trying to strive for. Sorry if this is sounding too esoteric and too, I don't know. It's very difficult to speak about these things in specifics, because these are just broad stroke patterns that I'm seeing within the conversation about manifestation and just some of the habits that I've found people getting into. So I'm speaking broadly for the moment. Now, the interesting thing, I wrote this on my Instagram story recently, you may have seen it, where I said, have you ever had that experience where you were just bipping along, you're doing your thing, you're having a good time, you're just doing different things, and you notice that you really start growing quickly. So then the money's coming in and you're meeting new people and you're having a good time, and oh, look at that popped too, and we're just having a good time, having a good time, having a good time. Okay, and the growth is easy, effortless, it's smooth, you're enjoying yourself. It's just this growth that the effortlessness cannot even be described with language. It's so natural and easy. And this happens for a lot of people. I see it all the time. People do it with social media audiences or business projects that they have, different goals and desires that they have just naturally come about as a result of being in the pocket. But as soon as they start to set parameters around it and make it an objective, a lot of what happens is they unhook from the core value or the core desire. They start prioritizing the external metrics, and then things start to go sideways. Or they start comparing what's happening now with what was happening then, rather than simply enjoying the unfolding, because that is a discipline. I want to make it really clear when we're talking about being present and enjoying ourselves and all that, there's a level of skill involved with that. And this is what I think is the most difficult thing for people, is because when you are so in the conscious mind, it wants to focus on the future and it wants to focus on the past, because that's just what it does. It wants to assess, it wants to evaluate what happened before, it wants to forecast what's going to happen. And when you do that, it's a mixed bag depending on what's going on, but it also doesn't give you very much control, and it also pulls you out of receptivity. When the number one goal should be to stay as receptive as possible, unless you are intentionally focusing on thoughts that feel good or hold some level of positive anticipation or something like that. So that would ideally be how you would use the conscious mind, is deliberately focusing and trending in the affirmative. That's the goal. I think that would be the thing that would result in the best possible outcomes for most people. However, that's pretty difficult. If you've been full of anxiety or you've had some past traumas or whatever, being able to continually have an optimistic lens and positive anticipation of what's happening, what you anticipate happening in the future, that is, it takes some work. It takes massaging. It takes reshaping your mindset. And this is why mindset work is important. Okay? Because if you can start trending in the direction of leaning nicer, leaning more optimistic, leaning a little more gentle, a little bit easier, a little more relaxed, things will start to reflect that back to you. So the interesting thing about all of this is you don't even need to get into the position where you have extreme joy and extreme satisfaction and extreme fulfillment and just radical conviction that you are going to get everything that you want. If you can sustain that and you're at the point where you have done so much mindset work that you are truly stabilized in that, you're more consistently in this energy of positive conviction, that's great. Keep it up. But for a lot of people, that actually feels tiresome, and that doesn't always feel the best. It kind of feels like, can I ever get a break? Is there any point in time, like when do I enjoy my life? Am I constantly just going to be focused on the next thing and needing to stay optimistic for the next thing and trying to avoid the thoughts of the past and trying not to remember those bad things that happened and the times before that I had a bad experience, blah, blah, blah. And what I find is that when there's too much emphasis on mindset work, it can go sideways because people don't know like the right percentage that they should be infusing into the situation or that they should be connecting to each day, because it's different. Like the level of maintenance that you want to give a particular situation or that is necessarily good for you on a day-to-day basis is going to vary. So this is why we have a variety of different tools. I'm saying collectively, we, as in anyone who has any desire to improve themselves or change their life or whatever, there's a wide variety of different tools that you can use for different seasons, different mental states that you find yourself in, so on and so forth. All of this to say, let me back up for a second, because it's really hard for me to not feel tempted to delete this, because I feel like I just went off on a 20-minute tangent that is, I don't even know if this is helpful for people, but I'm assuming it is, and I'm just going to post it anyway. Okay, so let me just tell you a story. Let me tell you a story about why states are important. States are important, I think now. It's all landing so well. Okay, good. Thank you for the feedback. I'm a little nervous. So the reason why states are so critical and so important and understanding what state you're in is so that you know when to not think yourself into a pit, or when to apply yourself to something. So for example, I am constantly hounding my clients, constantly. Anytime they have something stressful happen in their lives, I'm like, get away from the stuff that's important to you right now. This is not the time to start focusing on your money goals for the month. Don't do it, because there's going to be leakage as a result. If you're stressed, if you just had a traumatic event happen, I made a post about this a while ago where I was like, hey, if something really horrible happened, this is not the time to start evaluating all of these important areas of your life. Don't do that. You need to understand the context of your life. What's happening? Is it more appropriate to regulate your nervous system and give yourself a break? Or is it more of service to actually focus on, I don't know, growing a business or looking for new job opportunities or I don't know. I don't know what else people do. I'm mostly focused on work these days. But you get the idea that like you need to know when to step on the gas and when to not. So that's the importance of understanding what state you're in so that you can evaluate for yourself, what do I actually need next? We talked about this when I was speaking about OCD on Saturday. And I was talking about if you're dealing with an OCD spiral, that is not the time to be doing mindset work. Not the right tool. Mindset work is great, but it needs to be applied in the right context. Same thing with embodiment work. Embodiment work is great, but it needs to be applied in the right context. And so the area that is most atrophied, without a doubt, without exception, is the relaxing and the receiving. Without a doubt. I am just seeing more and more people are spending time in their minds, and it's causing a lot of issues because unless you are in a space that is emotionally clear and emotionally stable, the mind is not going to give you a whole lot of good stuff to work with. And more often than not, it's going to drag you through the mud. So this is where I'm like, we need to rebalance the scales here so that we can understand when to go deeper into the mind, when to stay away from it, and just kind of get into this state of non-thought, which is a meditative state. Okay, so we're talking about the same thing. Non-thought and meditative state, they're like my favorite things to talk about right now, because when you are not actively thinking from a habitual baseline, you are more receptive. So what I mean, and I posted this on Instagram recently. Unless you really know that your mind is clean, like it is ultra optimistic, it is ultra focused in the direction that you want it to go, it is solid, your beliefs are rock solid, you know that you can lean into your baseline thought forms with confidence. Okay, that's my desire for everyone, to get to that level of like stability in their belief systems. But the mind isn't, it's going to teeter depending on the mood that you're in. Okay, so that's why I'm saying there's a lot of caveats to what's going on with the mental body. For the majority of people, their baseline thought forms are a compilation of past experiences, past family of origin stuff, social conditioning, right? That whole collection of life experience that you have, and evaluations based on those past patterns. That is typically people's default, unless you've actively constructed something different for yourself. So everyone's going to be in a slightly different position. Like I said, some people have total confidence, like their mind is so stable and so good they can lean on it a little bit more. But what I find is most people do have a tendency to trend slightly or very negative, in which case it would actually serve you more and manifestations would come quickly or quicker if you simply stopped introducing a problem. So if you know that you trend slightly negative, or you're slightly doubtful, or you have more of a tendency to focus on problems instead of good things that are happening in your life, that means that every time you drift up into your mental body, you are going to be introducing doubt into the situation. And that's the part that slows things down. The good news is that you don't, like I said, you do not need to reach peak joy in order for things to improve, but the only thing that needs to be done is that you stop introducing the doubt. If you can just do that, things will improve. This is the hardest thing for people to do. Is you're moving around all day, and perhaps you do a 15-minute meditation where you're quieting the mind in the morning. And if you do that, it probably will change your life, where you're truly accessing that non-thought state. However, what's happening for the rest of the day? How long are you actually holding that meditative state? Or how long are you holding that leaning, trending, optimistic? That's where there's more variability. That's where it's more of a mixed bag. That's where things get complicated in terms of timing, in terms of manifestation, in terms of ease, problems and solutions that present themselves. So, okay, so the thing that has become my biggest area of fascination and my biggest point of fixation is what I'm calling kinetic meditations. Okay, so this is where you're doing something, but it's not putting you into pure mental body energy, because that's unreliable. Mental body energy, I don't know, it's a mixed bag. Everyone's dealing with something different. It's not reliable. Something that is more non-thought, just a little more non-thought, light, easy thought. That state is fucking magic for people. And what I find is that, let me talk about numbing. So numbing is another state that I find, I talked about this on a previous Instagram live that I did, as far as like people either want to go hard on manifestation tools and then they numb, and then they go hard on manifestation tools and then they numb, and then they go hard on manifestation tools and they try to force and then they numb, but then they're wondering why things aren't coming faster. And it's because the time that you're spending numbing is not allowing for any momentum around pleasure to develop. So you diffuse your focus, then it can't generate more momentum because you're continually diffusing your focus. Or worse, you are actively ingesting things that don't feel good. And you're getting 50,000 opinions, and you're getting 50,000 hot takes on all of these controversial things, or these things that you have a lot of emotional charge around. That's not good. If you are dominantly doing manifestation stuff, but then you're immediately going into consuming garbage media, it's like, what was the point of all of those manifestation tools that got you in the zone? They got you in the state that you wanted to be in so that you could carry that state into the rest of your day. Is that not the point? The point of you doing some embodiment work, or going into a meditation, or fantasizing and daydreaming about what your future self is experiencing and blah, 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 and what it would be like if, and living in the end, is that you can expand that for as long as you'd like. That's the goal, is for you to compound that experience. But generally speaking, that's not what's happening. Is people aren't allowing that energy to naturally mature and develop. People are stunting it and then numbing. And so it doesn't have a lot of places to go. And then on top of that, life can only meet you so far through the phone. You know what I'm saying? Life can only meet you so far through the television. And so now it's like we're in this position where there's too much numbing. There's not enough places for life to meet you. And so it seems like nothing is moving, and it seems like nothing is happening. But if you actually were in a state that is less trending negative, less thought-based, spent less time in the active, habitual mental body, get out of that habitual baseline, and you were able to do things that emphasize pleasure, allow the momentum to generate, and you were going out into life where the world can meet you and you can start getting a better idea of what your internal climate actually is. Well, that's a recipe for introducing more magic in your life and just things organically unfolding in wonderful ways. And I think that's what people are wanting. People are wanting life to meet them. And they're wanting more experiences, a richer quality of life. Okay, this is like the thing that I'm getting from people is that they're fucking bored. And it's this manifestation is viewed as a chore. And it shouldn't be. Manifestation is not a chore. Manifestation is just a natural consequence of your state. That's it. That's all it is. Shitty state, shitty manifestations. Feel good state, feel good manifestations. Input, output. And people have prioritized specifics over feeling. And that's completely backwards. If you were to prioritize just feeling good dominantly, that's the whole goal, is I'm going to feel as good as I can. I'm going to talk to myself as gently as I can. I'm going to do things that put me in a better feeling state, that so long as it does not harm myself and others. Okay, so I'm not talking about like smoking meth. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. But if you were to prioritize that, it would completely change the game for you. And so I'm just noticing that people are having a hard time getting themselves there manually. Occasionally people are falling into it and then things are going well for a moment, but it's a muscle. It's a deliberate practice. And this is why people are falling into numbing, and numbing is a state. This. Numbing and waiting are neighbors. Okay? So if you are in a perpetual state of numbing, you're going to be waiting for a while, for a long while, because think about, it's a stalemate. Numbing is a stalemate of energy, and waiting is a stalemate of energy. Those are compatible frequencies. So it would make sense if you're numbing a lot, your life is going to feel really slow. It's going to feel like it's dragging on forever and ever and ever. When are things going to get here? This is taking so long. I can't take it anymore. I'm just going to numb out and I'm going to scroll my phone. I can't take this anymore. That is exactly compatible with waiting. So if you want manifestations to take a long ass time, you know what you should do? You should numb out a lot. Numb out all the sensations. Think all the time. Overthink to high hell. Let it be a mixed bag. Introduce a lot of doubt into the situation, and your manifestations are going to take fucking forever. Well, that's how it's going to feel. It doesn't need to be that way. As a matter of fact, things can pop quickly. It can be like in an instant. Things can pop into your experience. You are the only one that is not cooperating, if you will. You're the non-cooperative component. That's what Abraham Hicks would say. Okay. And this, let's bring this all back to big kid school, is like, this is the one skill that I feel with my whole, every fiber of my being, is the most important piece of the puzzle for people. This section would be such a good reel. I'd love to share it. Thank you. Maybe I will clip this. You know, I think I should probably start having my editor like clip a whole bunch of things so that I can make little little segments with it. I'll start using the Sunday messages page more for more reels and stuff. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I need to get on that. But yeah, the numbing. The numbing piece is like the thorn in so many people's sides. And oh, let me tell you a story of what happened earlier this year. So for those of you who don't know, maybe you're new here. In early 2022, I manifested my dream home. It had a pool, it had a hot tub. It was amazing. It was in a canyon. I was like tucked away in nature. It was wonderful. It was a beautiful house. It had a gorgeous kitchen. It was like everything that I wanted in a home. Okay. And some things happened towards the end of the year that essentially led me to realize that I did not want to be in that house anymore. And I was ready for more. I was ready for different things. And I was having so much resistance to moving. Like I was completely freaking out about it. And whatever. I was just having some commitment issues, if you will. Committing to a new place was like terrifying to me. So anyway, I'm staying with family for a while. And at this time, this was when I was running the beta test for Graced. And I told everyone inside there, I said, this is the plan. I am going to have as much fun as possible. That is my number one goal. I'm going to do my best to every day have fun. And we're just going to see how it goes. I'm not going to hunt for a home. I'm not going to force anything. I'm not going to make this feel like a labor intense project. I'm going to prioritize my fun. I'm going to go do enjoyable things every day. I'm going to eat delicious food. I'm going to do all of this stuff. And I really made a conscious effort at it. And what ended up happening was then in January, it resulted in like my income kicking off. I sold out a bunch of different things early on. And then it naturally led into me getting the place. I also let people know that the difference in timing. So the first time I was manifesting the house, it took me 14 months. Second time, when I was prioritizing fun and pleasure and play and like fucking around the entire time, it took 6 weeks. So again, if you're holding the energy of numbing, that's compatible with waiting. So those were the two pieces that were really evident at that point. And so anyway, once my, again, core value, my core priority stopped being the home and it started being the emotional experience, the having of the fun, the pleasure, the play, then things were able to speed along. Because it's like having the time of your life is compatible with your heart's desires. Sitting and thinking to the point where you're suffocating your desires is not compatible with everything that you want. And so you really have to get into the habit of asking yourself, what is a harmonious state that is indicative of the life of my dreams or living happily ever after or getting everything that I want? And a lot of the time, what you'll come to realize is that a lot of what people consider to be manifestational tools will actually pull you out of that experience of living in the end or living happily ever after or having the time of your life or everything being complete, even though that's not a legit experience. Nothing will ever be complete. Let me see this. Doing this consumption fast has been changing my life. Consumption fasting will totally change your life. That's why I always recommend, like, just try it. Just try it and see what happens. Like, see what happens to your energy if you just cut out the consuming, because that also is essentially cutting out numbing, because you are working on it rather than being it. Yeah, okay, let's talk about living in the end for a second. Living in the end is like my current obsession. Okay, and it's the idea of playing with the idea of not focusing on the peak experience. Okay, so like if you were focusing on getting the job or making the sale or meeting the love of your life, that peak experience is actually very difficult to hold for an extended period of time. If you instead go a little bit beyond that, go a little bit farther out. And by the way, this is, I believe, the person who coined this term was Neville Goddard. You might know him. He's very, very popular manifestation teacher, big on imagination. I love his stuff. So the idea of living in the end is like, actually go to the end. Actually go to the end. If you were living in the end, so being in the end state means you are not asking how or asking when. Because if you were living in the end, if you're embodied in the end state, you're not after you make the money, you're not asking, how am I going to make the money? So emitting that question it can cause problems, because it immediately pulls you out of it's already done, when really your job is to get into it's already done. And what you'll notice is the more you start playing with this and contemplating it, is if it's already done, then I'm just enjoying my life. Answer: enjoy your life now, and things will unfold quickly. That's because you're living in the end. You're living under the assumption that it has already occurred. It has already done. It's already happened. So I don't need to entertain the hows and whens, even though it's like, okay, in practical human terms, let me make this really clear. In practical human terms, when you get a ping, when you get the inspired action, do it. Okay, like when you're getting the jolt to go look at this thing or go here, go there. Okay, those pings, it's like, yeah, listen to those impulses. But when we're talking about this state, meaning the broader emotional experience that you're having during the bulk of your day. This is the other reason why Big Kid School is like, I can't shut up about it. And I've been talking about it for hours and like coming on these lives and explaining all these mechanics to you, because it's like, when you understand that your end state is living in pleasure and enjoying yourself, that's the end of the story. It does not mean that you have to, well, if I already had $1 million, I would go buy a Porsche. So I'm going to go buy a Porsche now. No, come on. Don't be ridiculous with how this is applied. We're talking about a state. Sometimes it might involve action, but that a lot of the time will actually pull you out of this state. If you're saying, well, if I was a millionaire, then I would buy a Porsche, but I can't buy a Porsche now, so all of this is nonsense. And it's like, no, we are talking about the emotional and energetic state that you're inhabiting, and prioritizing pleasure and relaxation and just peace within your mind, body, and soul. Like, those are the things that actually are compatible with the end state. Okay. There was something else about this. I'm finding my train of thought again. Okay, here's another thing that's been coming up around all things manifestation. So, like the question, because you're working on it rather than being it, manifestation tools are like a way to get there. You know what I mean? So, in a sneaky way, if you're using them with the ulterior motive, it'll pull you out of the end state. So, if you're saying, I'm going to do this so I can make money, you already pulled yourself out of the state. Instead of looking at it as, I'm going to listen to this teaching, or I'm going to do this journaling to shift my state. Do you see the difference in intention? Because what ends up happening is people will say, well, I did my journaling and I did my meditation, so now where's my stuff? Like, look, that's no way to live. That's no way to live. That sucks. If you're just constantly like a spoiled, like, okay, I did it. Now where's my stuff? It's like you want to understand that the intention behind doing the practices has to do with shifting your state. And so where I think the linchpin in this entire situation has to do with what is happening during the bulk of your day. Okay, because manifestation practices and meditation, that's a very small section of your day. Actively thinking and taking action, that's also a very small part of the day. When you really think about it, it's like, okay, I'm on this live right now. This is me taking action on something. Well, this is 1 hour of my day. You know, I'm probably gonna wrap up. Not now. I probably have a lot more to say, but you get the idea. Like, this is 1 hour of time during my day. What the fuck am I doing with the rest of my day? And that's where Big Kids School is like helping people with that, because that's been the big problem. Is then it turns into, okay, I did this and I did that and I took some action, so now I'm going to default into negative thought or numb. No more. No more. This is why the purpose of Big Kids School is like, we need to reconstruct some things around understanding that it's important for you to live your life. Like, that's actually the real discussion. Is if you are in the habit of saying, I'm going to wait to live my life until blah, 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 you're in trouble. Not literally, but you get the idea. That is not a good position to put yourself in, because 1, you're waiting. 2, the things that you want are going to feel like they're taking forever. And the other thing is, when you get to the destination, I've talked about this many times, a new desire is going to emerge. And if you did not practice the skills of enjoying yourself and enjoying your life beforehand, then you're going to get to the destination and not enjoy your life because you have not been in the gym. That's the problem. Big Kid School is the gym. It's the gym where you practice. It's the gym where you start flexing your muscles around, I am not waiting, I am living. And through living, I'm going to see how much fun and pleasure and sensation I can hold and experience, so that when these things come, I can fully feel them. I can experience full sensation with them. I can appreciate them for all that they are, so that when I get the house, I can soak up every ounce of that neighborhood, and I can enjoy all of the things that are around me, and I can connect with all of the different nature-y spots that are around me, et cetera, et cetera. That's the goal. Otherwise, what can happen is people get to the manifestation and then they numb. I see it all the time. It's like, great, I had all this success and now I'm numbing again. Like, is that seriously what we're all doing here? Is like, I'm going to manifest and then I'm going to get it and then I'm going to numb. And I'm not going to be sensitive and enjoy all of the things that I've created. That's jacked. That is so not cool for anyone. So let's see what else. If you have any questions, you can drop them. And also, going back to the story that I mentioned before about me finding this new place that I'm in now, I just moved here in April. That time, so the thing here that is the most important is quality of time. There's a low quality time and high quality time. Low quality time generally is like, I don't want to like rake social media over the coals, because I love social media so much, and it's a gift and it's wonderful and it's amazing, and I'm on it right now and we're able to communicate with each other and I love the tool of it. However, if you really are, if that is dominantly where your attention is going, it's going to result in a high concentration of low quality time. This is what people are having a hard time with. If you were spending your time in high quality ways, then it would feel like I'm not even worried about the manifestations, because the quality of my time is so delicious and so wonderful that the timing is irrelevant. Boom, then it starts popping off, then it starts manifesting. I find I have health flares post manifesting. That's really interesting. Like, I reach my goal and then my body crashes. Okay, so this is what I mean by the experience of a manifestation is a sensation. So when we're thinking about success, that is related to the nervous system. So the amount of money that you can hold, nervous system. The amount of love you can hold, that's nervous system. So your nervous system threshold is not just for stress, it's also for pleasure. And this is why in big kids school, I'm not saying get in big kids school for your health. That's not what I'm saying. It's about being able to flex the muscles of the sensation you can feel inside your body when it comes to those successful experiences, right? So it does take practice and understanding that, like, as you're reaching into those ceilings, that the job is to tend to the nervous system. All of this is a workout. So the more sensitive you are to being present with the sensation, feeling, allowing, and regulating in the face of it. I've been working on limbic system and nervous system work for over a year. Good. If you've only been doing it for a year, that's a really, really good sign. Because the nervous system stuff that's a long-term game. So I'm sure it'll just be more time. Exactly. So you're just stretching into it. And if you're into nervous system regulation, you're at like the 1 year mark. This is good, because now you realize, oh, if I'm having health flare-ups, that's about the level of sensation that I can feel into. So you're just hitting that ceiling, right? And look at it as I'm expanding into more, but my intention is that I can do this without my whole body taking a hit. So I think it has to do with understanding that you're stretching and allowing yourself to be proactive with tending to it. And I think that'll be a good combo. Let me go back to these other questions. How do you keep yourself from bypassing when life hits you harder? I don't think people can I don't know anyone who can successfully bypass. I did a whole podcast episode on spiritual bypassing, and like, people think that it's I can just genuinely have something horrible happen or experience hardship, and then jump into like if you were trying to force feed yourself positive thoughts, would you actually retain the emotional shift? Probably not. People are overly concerned with bypassing. I don't know anyone who can do it. It can't be done. You can try, but it won't actually be effective. So why worry about bypassing? Is this making sense? Let me see this. How to maintain a high quality state when you need money in order to do that? I don't agree with that. I don't because again, getting into a non-thought state, you may not have been on the call when I was talking about that. Getting into a non-thought state is free. Practicing that, just dropping resistance, that's free. You don't need money to do that. Let me make sure. Okay. I assume the confession part of prayer, attend to the truth of the nervous system, then get into the state you want. I might need a little bit more context on this. The confession part of prayer. Okay, so the confession part of my prayer practice is like if I'm angry at God, or if I know that I'm like not handling something in the way that I know that I could or that I'd like to. And so then I want to like get honest with myself about that and that I'm disconnected. Sometimes that's what I'll use it for. Um yeah, I don't know what. Okay, and then in terms of state, okay, so if I were to do this, so I confess, I hash it out with God. Usually my first step is getting as close to non-thought as I can. Because again, that's actually where neutrality can start to open up, where resistance can drop and then things can start to shift. So it's about like giving yourself the opportunity for the clouds to pass. Or if I'm in a really, really bad emotional state, then it's like non-thought is critical. Getting myself closer and closer to non-thought, that is like the best thing I can do for myself. Because if you're in a bad mood or something happened, then it's like thinking about it can become kind of dangerous. Neutralize. Okay. Using microdosing to regulate the nervous system. I don't know enough about that to really comment on it. I'm generally, the older I get, the less of a fan I am of plant medicine, not in the way that you think. It's like, can plant medicine change people's lives? Yes. Do people use it recreationally and then call it medicinal? Yes. That's what I don't like. Is like be honest about what you're doing. So that's why I'm kind of a stickler on that. I'm uptight about that. Okay. Could you elaborate on the distinction between numbing and non-thought? Yes. Numbing. Okay, I also did a full podcast episode on this. So just want to be clear about that. Numbing is I'm aware that there's discomfort. I'm aware that there's discomfort, and I'm going to intentionally avoid it. No, I can't look. I don't want to look at the pain. Now, this doesn't actually give you the opportunity to recalibrate it. So the goal would be, if you were in pain, you would release enough resistance for a new perspective to drop in. So numbing is suppressing. It's don't look, don't look, don't look, don't look. And look, there have been times, and I had this experience recently where I was so depressed to the point where I was like, if I don't numb, I am seriously like on the verge of harming myself. It was bad. So numbing in a very limited context is something that you can use as a lily pad, but it's a very narrow window in which that's genuinely helpful. And so I talk about that window on my podcast, on the numbing episode. Non-thought means I'm not drowning anything out. I am releasing enough resistance for a new perspective to come in, for the next thought that is going to help me shift into a higher emotional state, a better emotional state, an emotional state that is more compatible with who I really am. And non-thought states allow you to access that. So do you see the distinction between that and numbing? Numbing is like suppression. Numbing is like you have a gushing bullet wound and you're trying to put a Band-Aid over it. That's like fine for a minute. That's okay for like damage control. But then it's the interesting thing about non-thought states is it gives you cleaner perspective. So for example, if I were to go binge TikTok, I'm being exposed to a ton of different perspectives that are reflective of my emotional mix that I am emitting. And so as soon as I go on TikTok, I'm just going to see things that are matching that. And sure, I might be able to drown out some pain in the moment, but as soon as you stop numbing, there's going to be maybe some of it has been relieved, but there's still going to be a certain amount of discomfort that you will have to recalibrate. So it might get you to come down off of that emotional charge for a moment, but you will still need to bridge the emotions or the thought forms or the whatever. Numbing is not the objective. Non-thought is. Oh, numbing is not objective. Non-thought is objective. I don't have a lot to say to that. Like, when I'm thinking of objective, I'm thinking of like numbers and empirical data. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Of course. Of course. So that's also why I'm like, all of these things are relative. So when we're talking about mindset tools, meditation tools, all of that stuff, it's like, it depends on what's happening, what's the context, the objective. Oh, you're asking. Got it. So the context in which you're applying tools it really matters. In the same way, if you're having the time of your life, you don't want to go into meditation. Wrong tool, wrong time. It's like, if you're having the time of your life, then you would want to double down on like, I'm feeling amazing. I'm having such a good time. I'm appreciating everything that's going on around me, blah, 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 blah. This is also a muscle. This is a sensitivity muscle. So in a big kid school, right, this is the gym. This is where we're working on your sensitivity. We're working on your pleasure threshold. We're working on your focus, your attention, your ability to hold all of the sensations and the experiences, and you're able to intentionally, diffuse focus or access it's almost like a creative state. Like when you're in like a kinetic meditation, which is like, yeah, I'm doing something, but I'm not really thinking about it. This is a lot of the time where the answers, the inspiration, the clarity, the higher perspective, all of these things start to drop in when you're able to get into that state, because it just allows you to get into the pocket. There's times and places for this, right? Again, if I were having the time of my life, if I were having like a big birthday party and I was being celebrated, I wouldn't want to go into a kinetic meditation. That wouldn't make sense, because that's just not the state that I want to be in. Why art is so therapeutic. Bingo. We're going to have an art week in Big Kid School. I didn't, but I love that. Non-thought for me is observation, recognition, and cataloging. Oh. Totally different conversation. So when I'm talking about non-thought state, I'm talking about a meditative state of some sort. So that was just a slightly different intention for this conversation, but I totally know what you're talking about. Like, I'm not applying any of my wisdom, if you will, not any subjective wisdom. I understand what you're saying. What shadow on a collective level created the forgetting of how to enjoy life? Which shadow? The simple answer would be like disconnection, right? That's always the answer to all of this. That's always the core shadow, like we talked about in 7 Deadly Shadows. That's the primary one, and then all of the others are kind of just variations of that. But what I think happened is, hold on. I'm like tuning into it to answer your question, because there's like some historical stuff I want to mention. I would say around the Industrial Revolution, you had production and expansion could, I mean, it just went through the roof. And so at that time, it's like production was essentially the leading edge of human expansion in all sorts of ways, like the speed in which we were able to make things happen, how we were able to grow, all of the different jobs that people were able to create. It's like there was so much that happened. And so growth in that sense, that's kind of where I see it tipping, or it did tip. And then you kind of had the information revolution, if you will, and technological revolution. When that happened, everyone jumped into their mind. Okay. So at first we were very growth motivated. I'm really curious to see if there's any astrologers who perhaps know of an astrological trend that I'm speaking to. But you had the production, growth, more, bigger, more. And that's not necessarily a problem. But then you had the informational technological revolution. So now everyone is in their mind, and now we are oversaturated with information. And this is where the numbing epidemic really comes from. Look at the opioid crisis. Okay, look at what's going on with fentanyl. All of this is a reflection of numbness. Collective numbness is the issue. And so I would say the issue that emerged from the past was overproduction. Now it's overconsumption. And so it's the pendulum is always like making its way back. And so because people are so oversaturated with information, and again, this is all my subjective assessment, if you will, my take on the situation, is that there was an overemphasis on production and consumption. And so now people are understanding this isn't actually going anywhere. So the pendulum has to come back in some capacity. I really do think that there will always be something that we're expanding into. And for a long time, it has been information, the circulation of information, communication, right? There's a lot of mercurial energy with all of this. And then as a result, we end up wanting more of something else. So this is where I'm like looking out at, well, what is actually wanted? What is the collective wanting? What is actually medicinal for us at this time? Because we're always trying to come back into homeostasis as a collective. And so that's really what I'm speaking to. Okay, let me get to these comments. Okay. Okay. Can we still submit to the advice column? Yes. Art, driving, showering, dancing, cooking, free writing, walking. These are times when there is a high probability of non-thought state. Yes. Yes. Dancing, big one for me. I think when we began to substitute living life with posting about life for likes, I think it was before that. I think it was a kind of like when that's why I brought up the Industrial Revolution, was it became very work focused. And when the Industrial Revolution occurred, I think that was really when we started to disconnect from our bodies even more. And it became about production, more. And because that's when there was more machinery that was brought into play, that pulled us away from staying somewhat connected to the earth. And so there was a lot of drifting from the mind into the body. This is, again, I could be wrong. This is just my theory. And then it was simply amplified and even more evident with the introduction of technology. So now you have people who are just so plugged in and disconnected from their bodies to the point where it's like making them sick. I think you can kind of imagine this, like if you've ever seen like a room that is just completely covered with screens and wires and it's all white and it's like this gross LED room, there's something that feels so icky and eerie about that because it's a strong disconnection from the body. And so as we feel that pain of being super disconnected from the body, again, coming back into that homeostasis pulls us back into the body. So will you be addressing nervous system regulation and working on increasing thresholds in that arena during Big Kid School? If so, could you briefly talk about how you might be doing that? Big Kid School is 100% application. So I'm not lecturing in that. I've talked about the nervous system a lot, but it's more every week we have a different theme that we're focusing on, and it's either kinetic meditation is going to be a lot of it. It's like getting into that gentle, light thought, loose, non-specific, gentle to put you in the pocket. Okay, so that's one thing, but it's all practice. So when we are together on calls, it's like 100% application. So I'll be explaining what we're going to be doing for the week and how we're going to be focusing. And then for the rest of that week, we're in the gym. We're in the gym together. And then there will be other, I hesitate to use the word more advanced stuff that we're going to be doing, but just more intensive. So things that might require a little bit more planning or right, might require some driving for you with whatever it makes sense for your lifestyle, things like that. So it's very much like, no, we're not talking, we're doing the thing. We're not talking about living life, we're living life. So that's like the purpose of it, is to take you out of lecture and put you into the lab, get you into the gym, get you into the application. I hope that makes sense. I mean, I'm sure, like, of course, we're gonna be, you can ask questions, right? Like, if you're wondering about nervous system, or if you are like, ooh, I'm feeling into like different thresholds within myself, we can talk about that, but I'm not dedicating lectures to it. Great points about oversaturation. Yes, that form of the American dream. I think, well, the American dream was a reaction to pain points that existed at the time. So what people, it's interesting, a lot of people demonize things that happened in the past, or kind of view them in like a dark light. But you have to understand that everything is a reaction to something that occurred before. And so that's why things just keep emerging. Like, we have new desires and new things that we want, and greater frontiers for expansion and things like that. And so new desires are born out of what we experience. And so I think the American dream was like really a gold standard for a pain point that a lot of people were experiencing historically. And yeah, I mean, it makes sense that a lot of people resonated with it deeply. And it's just that we've evolved into having different desires that are a different texture. Numbing has always been a part of the human experience, as part of processing the big feelings of mortality, missing out. Um, we turned up the volume and speed of the human experience, and need to turn to stronger numbing techniques when we haven't practiced healthy numbing and processing techniques. Yeah, so I think you came here late, because I talked about this in the beginning. I just briefly touched on numbing as being applicable within certain contexts, and it being a helpful tool in certain contexts. I don't think that like the application of it is something that we should overdo. I think there's like a narrow piece of like, yes, this is where it applies. I did a whole podcast about it if you are interested in my take on it. So I think numbing is neutral. It's just that people misapply numbing. If, that's my TED talk on numbing. Oh my God, it's 4:20 right now. Oh my God. I am talking. I have things to say. Okay, actually, I feel like I should probably wrap up. Let me see. What else do I want to say about this? Okay, with Big Kid School, if you are ready to actually practice getting into the state of receiving, accessing that more on demand, feeling into it, increasing your pleasure threshold through practice. We're actually doing it. That's why every week we're going to be experimenting with something different. We have a different theme, a different plan, different stuff that we're going to be doing. And so if you want to actually get into the gym, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, that is what we are going to be doing together. We start June 1st. I'm very excited about it. Go watch my other videos, my other Instagram lives. And I'm sure I will have many, many more things to say, but I hope this has helped in the meantime. And yeah, that's all I have for now. And I will talk to you all next time. Have a good one, everybody.